My wife lied about her job, so I crashed her office with the truth. I just wanted to surprise her with flowers for her promotion. Instead, I saw everything. I'll never forget that Thursday morning. She had left the apartment in a rush, heels clacking down the hallway, telling me she was off to a 4-day leadership conference 2 cities over. It sounded fancy. It sounded important. I was proud of her. She had been grinding hard at her marketing firm, staying late most nights, often too tired to even talk when she got home. So when she said she got chosen for this exclusive event, I didn't ask questions. I kissed her on the forehead, told her I was proud, and watched her go. But something about it didn't sit right. It started with a text I got from her coworker, someone I knew casually through company events. He messaged me a simple, "Hey, didn't see her in the office today. Everything okay?" Confused, I replied, "She's out for the conference, right?" The answer? "There's no conference this week. We're all in office for campaign week. No one's traveling." That was the moment my stomach dropped. Not from panic, from betrayal. Because now I had 2 choices. Brush it off and wait or dig deeper. I chose the second. I called her company's front desk, pretending to be a courier. "Hey, I've got a special delivery for her. Can you confirm she's in today?" The receptionist paused, then said, "Oh yeah, she's here. Want me to tell her you're coming up?" "No," I said. "I'll wait in the lobby." I wasn't in the lobby. I wasn't even in the building. But I would be soon. I called my buddy Tom, who worked freelance videography. "Bring your gear," I told him. "You're going to want to film this." An hour later, I was standing outside her office building, a bouquet in one hand, a GoPro clipped to my shirt, and Tom right behind me with his camera rolling. This wasn't just about catching her. It was about exposing the lie for what it was. We entered the building like we belonged there. I'd been there before during their holiday parties. The security guard even nodded at me. No suspicion. No idea what was coming. Elevator up. Nerves boiling. Every second felt like a lifetime. The doors slid open, and there it was, the open-plan office where she worked. Desks lined up like soldiers. Chatter. Laughter. The buzz of normal corporate life. I scanned the floor, and there she was. Not in a conference hall. Not leading a breakout session, but sitting way too close to a man I'd never seen before. His hand was on her thigh. She was laughing at something he said, head tilted in a way I hadn't seen in months. I walked straight toward them. People noticed me. Her coworkers recognized me. But no one stopped me. And then she looked up. Her smile vanished like someone flipped a switch. Her eyes darted to the camera, then to me, and for a second, I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Fear. "What is this?" I asked, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "The conference got moved to your desk?" The man tried to stand up, all flustered. "Hey man, let's not." "Don't," I said, cutting him off. "Not another word." She stammered. I can explain." "Save it," I said, tossing the flowers onto her desk. These were for the promotion. Guess they'll make a good goodbye gift instead. Gasps around the room. The silence was deafening. And then I walked out, cameras still rolling. But that wasn't the end. Not even close. She didn't come home that night. I didn't expect her to. After the scene I caused, I figured she'd either stay at a friend's or shack up with her little office boyfriend, hoping I'd cool off or disappear. But I wasn't going anywhere. I spent that night going over the footage with Tom. We trimmed it just enough to keep it clean, to make sure it wasn't vulgar. But the truth was still there in every frame. Her laughter, his touch, the shock on her face when she saw me standing there. No amount of excuses would erase that. What burned most wasn't the affair itself. It was the months of deception leading up to it. The nights she claimed she had meetings. The times I brought her dinner to the office and she told me not to come inside. The way she would smile at me like nothing was wrong. Like I was just some fool who'd never notice. I wasn't perfect. I worked long hours too, and sometimes I forgot to check in. But I never lied. I never made her feel like an afterthought. And yet, here we were. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of keys fumbling in the door. I stayed seated on the couch, arms crossed, waiting. When she stepped in, she looked like someone who had spent the night crying, or maybe trying to come up with the perfect apology. She froze when she saw me. "Before you say anything," I said, "just know I've got everything on camera. You were mic'd up the second I walked into that office. Every word, every look, every fake excuse, recorded." She looked down. "You ambushed me." "No," I cut her off. "You ambushed us, our marriage, our plans. You told me you were building a future, when really you were building a lie." "I made a mistake," she said, voice cracking. "It wasn't supposed to be." "What? Serious? Permanent?" Because from where I was standing, it looked real comfortable. Silence. I kept going. "Was this the first time? Or just the first time you got caught?" She didn't answer. Her silence told me everything. I stood up, grabbed a manila envelope from the table, and tossed it to her. Inside were screenshots, texts she thought were deleted, bank charges she didn't think I'd notice, even a printed confirmation of the hotel she booked during her so-called conference. All the proof, all the dots connected. She opened it and just stared. "I didn't want it to go this far," she finally whispered. "He made me feel seen. You were always working, always distracted. I felt invisible." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. "So instead of talking to me, you just created your own little world? Lied to my face? Built a second life during lunch breaks?" "I'm sorry." "No, you're sorry you got caught." She sat down on the floor, hands in her hair. "What do you want me to say?" "Nothing. There's nothing left to say. I just wanted to look you in the eyes one more time and let you know. I'm not the same man you thought you could lie to. I'm done being that guy." I left the apartment after that. I needed air, space, clarity. Tom called me an hour later. "The footage is already getting traction," he said. "You sure you want to post the full thing?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to bury it, let it rot in the digital basement of our lives. But the other part, the part that was humiliated, betrayed, and sick of pretending, knew this needed to be seen. Not for revenge, for closure. "Post it," I said, "but blur her face." He paused. "You serious?" "Yeah. Let her live with the truth. But I'm not out to destroy her. Just done protecting her lie." By that evening, the video had gone viral. People shared it faster than I could keep up. The comments poured in, some calling me brave, others warning about legal fallout. But what caught me most were the messages from strangers. People who had gone through the same thing. People who felt seen. I wasn't alone. And somehow that mattered more than I thought it would. The next few days were chaos. She called, texted, showed up at my work, left voicemails at all hours. Her tone shifted between apologies and rage, as if she couldn't decide whether to beg or blame. I ignored them all, until the day her company called me. They wanted a meeting. Not about her, they said. About the footage. Apparently, the exposure had forced them to launch an internal investigation. Her lover? He was married too, and in a higher position. HR was involved now. They wanted details, dates, evidence. I gave them everything, not to destroy her, but to set the record straight. By the end of the week, she was suspended. By the end of the month, everything she built in that office started to crumble. And I hadn't even gotten started yet. The silence between us grew louder with every passing day. She had stopped calling by the third week, but I knew it wasn't over. Not for her. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she was spiraling. First came the HR inquiry, then the meetings with legal, and finally, the suspension that was upgraded to termination after her relationship with the senior exec came fully to light. He was fired too. Just like that, they both lost everything they tried to keep secret. And to think it all started with a lie about a conference. But none of it gave me peace. Not really, because I wasn't looking for revenge when I walked into that office. I was looking for answers. I was looking for the woman I married. The one who used to laugh with me in the kitchen while dancing barefoot at midnight. The one who used to write love notes and leave them in my work bag. That woman was gone. Replaced by someone who could look me in the eyes and lie without flinching. And when I realized that, really realized it, I understood something brutal. There was no version of this story where we recovered. I tried to stay low profile after everything went public. But the internet doesn't forget. The video had already passed 1 million views, and I started getting interview requests. Talk shows, podcasts, even a couple of tabloids reached out. They wanted the scoop. They wanted the man who exposed the ultimate office affair. I declined them all. I didn't want to be famous for pain. I didn't want my face to be tied to betrayal forever. But I did keep the video up. Not to humiliate her, but to remind myself never to ignore my instincts again. One night, about a month after everything came crashing down, I got a knock on the door. It was past 10, and I wasn't expecting anyone. I almost didn't answer, but when I looked through the peephole, I saw her. She looked different, tired, worn down. Not the polished, confident version of herself she used to carry like armor. I opened the door but didn't say a word. "I know I'm the last person you want to see," she said quietly. "You're right about that. I'm not here to beg," she said. I need you to hear me. One last time." I let her in, not because I wanted to, but because a part of me needed closure. She sat on the edge of the couch, like a stranger in a waiting room. "I lost everything," she said after a long pause. "The job, the apartment. I couldn't afford the rent after getting fired. Him too. Turns out he had a family he didn't plan on leaving." I didn't react. I just watched her. "I messed up," she continued. "But it didn't start with him. Started with us. With all the nights we stopped talking. With all the things we didn't say. I was lonely, and I blamed you for not noticing." "You blamed me?" I asked, feeling a flicker of anger return. "I'm not saying it was your fault," she said quickly. "I'm saying I used it as an excuse. I told myself you didn't care anymore, so it was okay to find someone who did. But it wasn't okay. It was weak and selfish, and it destroyed everything." "You're not wrong," I said flatly. She nodded, eyes glistening. "I've started therapy. I'm trying to figure out how I became that person. But I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know that I see it now. All of it." I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "I appreciate the honesty, but it doesn't change what happened. You didn't just cheat on me. You lied to me for months. You turned our marriage into a performance." "I know," she whispered. We sat in silence for a long time. "I'm not here to ask you to come back," she said, finally standing. "I know that door is closed. I wanted to say goodbye the right way. Not with cameras. Not with flowers thrown on a desk. Just words." I nodded once. "Goodbye then." She walked to the door, hand on the handle. "You're a good man. I hope you find someone who doesn't need to lose you to realize it." And then she was gone. I sat there for a while, trying to decide what I felt. Sadness? Relief? Maybe both. The truth is, healing doesn't come in big dramatic moments. It comes in tiny pieces. Slow mornings where you don't wake up thinking about them. Quiet nights where the silence doesn't feel like a punishment. I was getting there. Slowly. Weeks passed. Then months. I moved to a new place. Started hitting the gym again. Reconnected with old friends I'd lost touch with. Laughed more. Smiled more. Somewhere along the way, I stopped checking her socials. Stopped wondering what she was doing. Stopped caring. But the real shift happened the day I got an email from someone I didn't know. The subject line read, "Thank you." It was from a man who had seen the video. His wife had been cheating on him for over a year. He said he kept blaming himself, thinking he was imagining things. But after watching my story, he confronted her. She confessed. They separated. He said he felt like he had his life back. That's when I understood. Maybe this pain wasn't just mine to carry. Maybe sharing it helped others let go of their own. And just like that, the shame I'd been holding started to dissolve. But there was still one last piece of this story left. One final truth that hadn't come to light. And I was about to uncover it in the most unexpected way. It started with a message request I almost ignored. A small, unread notification buried beneath dozens of others. People commenting on the video, sharing their own stories, asking for advice. But this one was different. Came from a woman I didn't recognize. No profile picture, no followers, just a blank account with a name I didn't remember. The message was short. If you're ready for the full story, I think it's time you knew everything. I worked with her. I saw what happened. At first, I thought it was a joke or a troll trying to stir the pot. But something about the phrasing stuck with me. I clicked into the chat, stared at it for a long moment, then replied, "What exactly are you talking about?" She responded almost immediately. "She wasn't the only one. Your wife wasn't just having an affair with him. There were others. And what she told you wasn't the whole truth." My pulse kicked up. I felt that old ache again, the one I thought I'd left behind. I asked her to prove it. She did. Screenshots, emails, even a short clip from the office security feed where my wife was far too close to another man in a conference room after hours. It wasn't the same guy from the footage I posted. It was someone else entirely. Different build, different face, same secretive energy. This wasn't a one-time slip. It was a pattern, a lifestyle, a string of lies woven together so tightly that not even she could keep track of them all. The woman from the message turned out to be a former assistant on the marketing team. She'd seen things, heard things. She told me she tried to bring it up to HR before, but nothing was done. Probably because some of the people involved were above her pay grade. She left the company not long after my video went viral, but she said watching the fallout made her realize she'd been sitting on too much silence for too long. My head was spinning. As much as I'd thought I'd already uncovered the full truth, this took everything to a new level. I wasn't dealing with a single betrayal. I was dealing with someone who had built an entire facade around deceit. Someone who had mastered the art of the double life. I didn't confront her again. There was no point. She had already said her piece. She had already admitted to being unfaithful. But she hadn't told me the scope of it. And now, every moment of our relationship was under question. How much of it had been real? How much had been calculated? It was a gut punch all over again. But this time, I didn't spiral. I didn't collapse. I got stronger. I poured myself into rebuilding everything she'd left in ruins. My trust, my confidence, my identity. I took time to write, to reflect, to process. Not in front of a camera this time, but for myself. Quietly, honestly, I started journaling at night. And every entry began with the same sentence. This is what's real. Because the truth had been manipulated so many times, I needed to reclaim it. Not just for the sake of the story, but for the sake of who I was becoming. Not the guy who got cheated on. Not the guy who exposed it online. But the guy who came out of the fire sharper, wiser, and absolutely unwilling to ever settle for half-truths again. In the middle of this personal rebuild, something unexpected happened. I met someone, not in a dramatic, movie-like way, just a casual introduction through a friend. We got coffee, we talked, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the weight of everything I'd been through hanging over me like a shadow. She didn't ask about the video, didn't bring up the scandal. She saw me, not the headlines, and I didn't feel the need to perform or explain or hide behind sarcasm. I just existed, freely, openly. It was terrifying and beautiful all at once. One night, a few months into seeing each other, she asked me if I'd ever been in love before. I thought about lying, about brushing it off, but I didn't. I thought I was, I said. But it turned out I was just in love with the idea of who someone used to be. She nodded. No judgment, just understanding. She didn't try to fix me. She didn't dig for details. She just sat with me in the quiet and let me feel whatever I needed to feel. That's when I knew this was different. Not rushed. Not built on broken promises. Just real, fragile honesty. I didn't know what the future would look like, but for the first time in over a year, I wasn't afraid of it. And just as I was finally starting to settle into this new chapter of my life, something unexpected arrived in the mail. A letter. Not an email. Not a text. A handwritten envelope, addressed in familiar cursive. It was from her. Inside was a single sheet of paper. One final confession. And what it said changed everything I thought I knew. One last twist in a story I thought was over. The envelope sat on my desk for 2 days before I opened it. I wasn't sure why I didn't just toss it. Maybe part of me hoped it was nothing, just a symbolic gesture, a final goodbye I could ignore. But I couldn't shake the feeling that if she went out of her way to handwrite something and send it by mail, there was more to it. More I wasn't ready for, but needed to face. When I finally opened it, her handwriting rushed at me like a familiar scent I hadn't smelled in months. Clean, precise, the way she used to label things in our shared kitchen cabinets, always needing order where chaos lived. The letter began simply. I know I said everything I needed to say the night I came to your door, but there's one truth I couldn't bring myself to share in person. I've carried it long enough, and you deserve to know. I braced myself. She continued. I didn't just lie to you about the affair. I lied to everyone. About who I was, what I wanted, and most of all, about why I did it. The truth is, I started pulling away long before the affair happened. I started feeling like a fraud in my own life, like I was playing the part of a wife, a professional, a future mother, without ever really believing I was any of those things. I thought pretending would eventually make it real. It didn't. I kept reading, jaw tight, heart hammering. I didn't sleep with those men because I was in love with them. I didn't even like most of them. I did it because I hated myself. Because with every choice I made, I was testing how far I could fall before someone stopped me. You never did. Not because you didn't care, but because you trusted me. And that scared me more than anything. Because I couldn't live up to the version of me you believed in. She described a spiral. One I hadn't seen. One she'd hidden behind ambition and lipstick and those forced smiles at the dinner table. I became addicted to the attention. The thrill of the lie. The risk. I knew I was ruining everything, but part of me wanted it to crash. Because if it crashed, at least it wouldn't be fake anymore. And the saddest part is, I took your silence for indifference. When really, you were just giving me space to breathe, to be my own person. I confused freedom with abandonment. And I used that confusion to justify betrayal. I paused there, stunned. Not because I was shocked she had spiraled so deep, but because I realized I had never once considered how much she might have hated herself in the process. I thought I had been the only broken one. But maybe we were both carrying our own invisible wreckage, too scared to hand it to the other. The letter went on. I'm not writing this to ask for a second chance. That part of our story is over. I see that now. I'm writing this because no matter how many lies I told, the one truth I always held on to was that you were good to me, better than I ever deserved. And you didn't lose me. I lost you. I threw you away because I didn't think I was worthy of being kept. The last line was underlined. I hope one day someone loves you with the clarity I never had. And I hope you'll let them. I folded the letter, placed it in a drawer, and sat in silence for a long while. Not angry, not heartbroken, just still. It wasn't closure in the way movies show it. It didn't erase what she did. It didn't undo the pain. But it gave me something I hadn't expected. Understanding. And with that, I felt the final weight lift. I moved on. Truly moved on. I kept building my new life, step by step. The woman I had started seeing stood beside me through it all, never rushing me, never demanding more than I could give. And slowly I opened up, not just to her, but to the possibility of being whole again. A year passed. The video that once defined my story faded into the archives of the internet. People stopped messaging. The attention died down. And I was grateful for that, because I didn't want to be remembered as the guy whose wife cheated. I wanted to be remembered as the guy who chose to heal, who turned betrayal into rebirth. We all get broken in different ways. Some by lies, some by silence, some by the weight of our own expectations. But what defines us isn't what shatters us. It's what we build in the rubble. And I chose to build something real. So if you're watching this, if you've made it to the end of my story, I just want to say one thing: don't let betrayal make you bitter. Let it make you better. Let it wake you up. Let it burn away the illusions so you can finally see what's true. And if you've ever been where I was, sitting in the wreckage, wondering if you'll ever feel whole again, trust me, you will. But only if you stop trying to go back to what broke you. Instead, move forward. Build new. Love smarter. Live louder. and never again settle for a love that hides in shadows. Thanks for listening. If this story meant something to you, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, and let me know how you came back from betrayal. You're not alone. Not anymore.